Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus. I'm your usual host, Michael Moore, along with our usual preview hosts, Brandon, Marion Lee, and Dan Schneier. We are recording during Game 7 of the World Series, which should show you how much dedication we have. Although, to be honest with both of you, I definitely was watching Westworld before this, and I definitely watched it last night during Game 6. So don't at me when you listen to this. But I will watch the end of it. I will watch the end of it no matter what. So did you two watch it last night, or am I the only one that did that?
I watched part of it. I had another interview for like half of it. So, but yeah, I watched the end to make sure that it all went down. I thought it was a little weird that everyone was like, "Oh, I guess it's definitely over" when he hit the grand slam. I was like, there are a lot of innings left.
No, that was me, because I saw it on Twitter and it said Addison Russell grand slam. And I'm like, oh well, I don't need to watch it anymore. So,
well, yeah. It ended up being true, but I got nervous. I was like, well, gee.
Dan, what about you?
That was me too. I quit at 7-0 because I wanted to watch the World Series of Poker final table, which was pretty exciting for a poker team like myself.
It also was probably more exciting than the game last night. So
right. I mean, at 7-0, you kind of know where it's going. And I also do have the luxury in my apartment. I have set up a little bit of a 2 TV setup where I have one TV atop of the other. So I did have it on the bottom screen, just no sound.
Nice. You're doing it right, Dan. Good for you. That's how you should do it. Anyway, all right. So we will get to some news and notes, mainly injury news on this episode. A little later, Jeff Ratcliffe will talk to NFL Network's Dave Damashek in an interview, and then we will look at your best and worst matchups for DFS this week. But first, let's get to the bad news, injury news first. So the Chiefs, besides their quarterback, Alex Smith, definitely not playing this week with Nick Foles starting. Also, probably the more important fantasy news for everyone, Spencer Ware did not practice today, still in concussion protocol. Charkandrick West does look like he will be the bell cow on Sunday. Dan, where do we put West? He's playing a Jags defense that, quite honestly, plays fantasy running backs not bad.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. The Jags defense is not that bad this year. Like you said, they play fantasy running backs well. They're middle of the pack as far as our ratings go. They were in the top 10 for a while, dropped out. But at the same time, we've seen in the past that Spencer Ware, Jamal Charles, whoever the Chiefs really throw back there in that role, ends up getting close to 80-85% of the touches. They really like to work with one running back, and it's really hard to pass up on that kind of volume this week. I will say this about West: if Ware is ruled out, and I think he will be, West is gonna have super high ownership in daily fantasy, so he becomes kind of only a cash game only play. And I think if somebody could present to me a strong enough take for why this is just too bad of a matchup to play Charkandrick West, it might make sense to just fade him, because you're just going to gain such an advantage on the field that is going to use him nonstop because his price is so low.
Brandon, what do you think? Are you fading West, or are you going with him?
I mean, I'm diversifying. Let me tell you, because okay. Spencer Ware killed my entire FanDuel lineup got hurt last week. They all left the game. Ware, Booker, Hilton, Julio. I mean, I don't even know where to go.
I was going to say, are we going to see another Devontae Booker where he has like 95% ownership this week?
Well, no, the thing with Booker, you're saying with West, right? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it just is. So I guess this is my thing about the Jaguars. You're right. They used to be in the top 10. They were doing a really good job. And, they did allow over 100 yards and a touchdown to Melvin Gordon early in the season. But then they faced people like Eddie Lacy, who, had some issues, Terrence West, Frank Gore, who's just always,
Don't
even keel.
Frank Gore, Brandon.
But there's no ceiling. It's just even keel. Even solid RB2 flex numbers, but he's never gonna break through, right? Just never gonna get that 100-yard game, never gonna have multiple touchdowns, just even, right? And then there was Jordan Howard from Chicago, who did score a touchdown, but it was only 34 yards, right? It was that weird game after the Jaguars bye. But since then, Latavius Murray scored 2 touchdowns on them. Both DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry had touchdowns on them last week, and they totaled 183 yards together on the ground alone, over 200 if you put in their receiving yards. Since their bye week, they've fallen off a cliff. Now, unless replacing their offensive coordinator is going to rejuvenate that run defense, I don't think it's that bad of a matchup, especially if you're going to get 95% of the carries. I mean, how many running backs are getting that anymore?
Yeah, I think, it's just going to be a matter of if you want to risk the chalk play, right? Like, he's going to be a big waiver wire addition in redraft leagues, and he's going to be highly owned just because he's cheap and he's going to be the bell cow. So it's just a matter of, hey, do you want to roll with that? All right, another running back situation this weekend in Tampa, where they are on their fourth starting running back for the season after Doug Martin, after Charles Sims, and after Jaquiz Rodgers teased all of us with his good couple of weeks. Then he got injured. So now it looks like Antone Smith will be the lead back. I don't know. Is there anything there? He plays Atlanta, who gives up the fifth most fantasy points to running backs. But again, he's literally the fourth running back on the depth chart. So do we trust him this week?
Yeah, I mean, and you can count me as somebody who was definitely surprised last week when Jaquiz went down and Smith saw 22 total snaps and Peyton Barber only saw 3. I didn't see that coming, but again, remember, Smith was that guy who was actually on the Falcons a couple years ago, or maybe it was like 3 or 4 by now, and he had a lot of burst. He had a lot of surprising juice. He got a couple injuries, kind of derailed his career. And now he's landed once again with the Bucs. And I actually like him this week as somebody, like, if you're hard pressed on the wire, you need somebody to fill that flex. You need somebody to fill that RB2. Again, we have a lot of bye weeks this week, so it makes sense. You're going to get somebody who, one, is in a matchup that's going to have a lot of offensive plays. Both of these teams run at a very fast pace. 2, you're going to have a matchup that's on that Thursday night slate, so you know what you're going to get ahead of time. You can kind of maneuver the rest of your lineups if you need a high floor, if you need a high ceiling, depending on how well he does. And then 3, you're going to get a guy who's in an offense, like you said, who can definitely move the ball on the ground against this Falcons defense. They play that funnel style, that Seahawks style. It's not working too well for them because they don't have the same kind of talent the Seahawks have or had at this point. And I think that it's really just a great matchup with a chance for a lot of offensive plays. And honestly, I mean, it's a risk because who knows if they look at the tape and say, okay, we're going to play Peyton Barber instead this week. But at the same time, these are the type of times you want to take. These are the type of weeks, I should say, you want to take these risks.
Well, yeah, and I think the other thing to remember is if they get down early or it's a shootout, it's not like they're going to be running the ball against Atlanta. I mean, they could be passing it, and you could have a Brandon special Jameis game with 4 touchdowns. So, but speaking of
Olawale,
there you go. Yeah, so
someone's going to ruin our lives.
Yeah, I know. And if we knew it, believe me, we'd all be winning the lottery.
You know what I do want to? I want to chime in on this though, because 2 years ago, Antone Smith, remember he was averaging like 60-some yards per carry for a while there. Remember how crazy that was when he was in the Atlanta Falcons? He had a 59.7 breakaway percentage here on Pro Football Focus, which is just absurd. Now he only had 23 attempts, but that
is the definition of small sample size.
Yeah, it was right. But if you want someone who's just gonna like break away and maybe have a 60-yard run and a touchdown, I think Antone Smith probably has the best chance out of anyone here to do that, right? And Peyton Barber has 0 catches on the season. If you're in a PPR league, that's something to take note of. 0 targets, 0 catches, nada.
Well, look, and I never thought I'd say this, but it could be the Antone Smith revenge game that we, didn't see coming. So.
We all knew that was coming, though. We had that marked on our calendars, right?
Right. All right. So speaking of injuries, Brandon, and I know you had an article on Pro Football Focus talking about some gimpy players and what to do with them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, like guys like Russ Wilson, DeMarco Murray, Devontae Booker, etc.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, in the nicest way possible, you cannot start Russell Wilson. And I don't know. I started writing about this in week 1. I had a bigger article in week 2. So then this week I just decided to go all out. I was like, no, you guys, half of my article is going to be dedicated to this one player and how he's affecting all of your other fantasy prospects. So the problem is that obviously the pectoral muscle injury was serious, right? On top of that, the injured knee, the injured ankle, things that can be on the injury list or not. But the whole plain fact of the matter is that the entire man is beat up right now. I'm trying to pull up my thing, which of course I just love it when I like have something to say that my computer goes like this. But
it's the human element, Brandon. It shows that we're all in this together.
yeah, right. You're like, oh man, Brandon. Okay, so the thing is that right now, Drew Brees and Eli Manning have used play action more than Russell Wilson this season. Yeah. Drew Brees.
I also saw a stat, and you may be going with this. So I believe Matt Ryan, who himself not a runner, actually has more rushing yards than Russell Wilson on the season this year.
Yes, he does.
Sad/incredible. So.
Oh, it's unreal. I mean, the thing is that it used to be that, play action was kind of like his big thing, right? He also, he is accurate under duress. He still has a 73.3 accuracy percentage when it comes to being under pressure. It's just that he's not attempting anything. Nothing's really happening. It's just plays are disintegrating before they start because he just can't move. If you add to that the offensive line issues, it's bad. So it used to be that he used to use play action on 30.8% of his dropbacks in 2014, which was the second most in the league. Then it went to 24.3 last year, which was the sixth most. This year it's 14.6, which is the 25th most. They have had to rearrange their entire playbook based off of his injuries. So that's a big warning flag moving forward.
And just some Russ Wilson stats for you. So he is still averaging 258 yards a game, so not bad. Probably won't clear 4,000. At least he's not on pace for that. But yardage was never his thing, right? Like he was never going to throw for 5,000 yards. So that's not really that surprising. But the touchdowns, the passing touchdowns, he has 5 on the year in 7 games. And 3 of those came in one game against the Jets. It's really bad. Like, I don't think, I know you have been sounding this alarm, Brandon, but I think for a lot of people, they didn't realize how bad it was. And he plays a Buffalo team this weekend, which, again, they've given up the 3rd least amount of points to fantasy quarterbacks this year. So
0 touchdowns since week 4. 0.
Yeah,
that means 0 touchdowns for everyone else.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think I would ever see the day. So. All right, another gimpy player, Dan. I know you have talked about DeMarco Murray on Pro Football Focus. So what's the deal with him? I mean, he's got the toe injury. Should we be targeting Derrick Henry? What should we do?
Yeah, I think this is a classic case of fantasy recency bias. Just 2 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago, before the 2014 season, Murray was viewed as one of probably the most injury-prone players in the NFL. He had been injured. His injuries actually date all the way back to his days at Oklahoma. He dealt with a lot of injuries there, and I actually read a little further into this, and he was kind of one of those high school players who also couldn't even make it through. And then got to the Cowboys, and leading up to that 2014 breakout season, Murray had 3 years that were kind of could be considered injury prone. He didn't play in 16 games any of those years. He had 10 games one of those years. He had 13 and 14 the other 2, but he had a lot of those games where he was playing through an injury. And I think now we look at it as a guy who's avoided the injury bug as of the past 2 or 3 seasons, but he now has this toe injury. And again, he's had these injuries in his career. And what we see here is like a super great opportunity, in my opinion, to buy really low on Derrick Henry. Obviously, he had the big game last week, and he kind of showed on national TV what he's capable of. But that hasn't really changed his value because Murray's been such a workhorse. But to me, like, you have a chance here to hit a potential home run pick, the guy who can potentially win you your fantasy league this year in Derrick Henry. To me, he came out into the NFL. A lot of people compared him to Brandon Jacobs. But come on, Brandon Jacobs couldn't catch passes like Derrick Henry, and he did not have the lateral agility that Henry has. Henry so far this season actually has the 3rd best elusive rating among active running backs that have seen at least 25% of their carries. Only Jay Ajayi and Jordan Howard have a better elusive rating, and their elusive rating is kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Propped up by the fact that they create a lot of yards after contact. What Henry does best is force missed tackles. He has 18 force missed tackles on just 62 total touches this season, which is unbelievable. There are 27 backs, let's say, with a higher yards per carry yards after contact per attempt, I should say, and that shows you how elite Henry is in the open field. So again, we're talking about somebody who's in a situation where the starter already has an injury, has a lengthy injury history, and he's an elite talent. This is a guy that I'm going all in on here.
Well, and one note on Henry, Dan, that I like personally, I mean, we all remember he racked up 400 carries last year at Alabama, like an insane number. And like you said, he only has 62 touches this year. So, look, I mean, it's not great if you went all in on Henry, thinking he might overtake Murray early on. But look, for his long-term value, I think it's great that he only has 62 touches so far and probably won't see 150 on the season, assuming DeMarco, doesn't get injured for an extended amount of time. So
he doesn't have breakaway potential, though, just to FYI. He's only had like 2 breakaway runs. He has a 16.7% breakaway percentage. So he's not going to get you the big plays. So you're going to need volume if you want points. And he needs to be on the field. So again, Murray has to be out. He's doing a good job, against, when he gets contact, but he's not going to go in for a couple plays and get you the points that you need. So to me, this is incredibly injury dependent. Obviously, the Jaguars just imploded. I mean, what can we say about last week? But prior to that, his points are where his points are if Murray's on the field. So yeah, the injury changes everything, but I would keep an eye on it because he just doesn't have big playability, which I think is where the Brandon Jacobs, which by the way, very sad. I would never do that to him, but that's probably where that comes from, right? Is that he's not a guy who's going to just break away and make some huge play happen to get you points. He only has 37 total yards on plays that are for 15 or more yards. So that means he just barely got 2. I mean, that's how math works. So, that's the only part that I would participate in. Again, love the talent, Dynasty League, I'm all in, but I'm a little nervous because they love DeMarco Murray there. They're obsessed with him.
And to that point, Brandon, they're still in the division race. They're only 1 game back, which means it's not like they're going to go on, okay, let's just throw the young guys out there now.
Check out our talent. Yeah, no, they're probably going to the playoffs.
So.
Look at the rest of their division.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm with you though, Dan. If you've got a roster spot, I mean, look, you're looking for lottery tickets at this point, right? That could win you a championship. If you've got an extra bench spot, I mean, Henry's about as good a handcuff as you can get, I think. I think he may be the best one out there.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree.
He's not going to be like Antone Smith this week and put up, some points in PPR leagues or catch some passes or something like that. He's not one of those like bye-week fill-in type guys. He's the type of guy you pick up and you kind of, and we don't want to say root for injury because you're never doing that, but you hope that your team, I can't even say this in any
in the off chance that a running back gets hurt, he's a very good option.
You play the odds.
There you go.
You brought up how many injuries and how many games he had missed before, DeMarco Murray, that is. And based on the usage, I think that you can play the odds on this for sure.
Right.
That's the political way to say it, I think.
There you go.
You nailed it.
A week out from the election, I really nailed this political correctness.
I don't know what life's going to be like after it. I really don't, but.
Well, there is no life after it. Don't you know that? If you look at Twitter, it's all over, no matter what side wins.
Nuclear option. That's right. But until then, we have a special guest on this episode. Let's send it over to Jeff Ratcliffe, interviewing Dave Damashek of the NFL Network. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Good stuff there. Now, you two, let's get into our best and worst DFS matchups of the week. Let's start with the good news first. Dan, let's start with you. Who are some guys you're targeting this week?
All right, so I mean, this one's not going to be any kind of contrarian play at all. I'm sure the ownership has a chance to reach meteoric levels here, but I'm going all in on Ezekiel Elliott. We've got the Browns on tap, and all I've been doing this season is targeting the Browns in daily fantasy. Last week, a lot of people were not on board with these jet stacks. People didn't want to play Forte. People didn't want to play Fitzpatrick, Marshall. They kind of did all right by not playing those two, but if you skipped on Forte, and then again, even against the Browns, you can see a guy like Enunwa go off because this is a defense that's going to give up at least 2 weekly dominant performers every week. And just look at it. Dalton and Green the week before. Even Tannehill did some work against them earlier in the season. So this week, Ezekiel Elliott, comes into town, or actually, are they in Cleveland? No, they're in Cleveland. Yeah. Right, going into Cleveland, place that is going to be either a little bit sad or a little bit happy, depending on the result of the game that I have no idea about right now. But no matter what, they're a terrible football team. This defense is it better than Alabama's right now? I'm not sure with all the injuries.
Oh, no. Not the Alabama argument, Dan.
The Alabama argument.
No. You can't do that on a legitimate podcast, man.
Okay, you're right. You can't do the Bama argument. Is it better than Bama's defense combined in the last 4 seasons? That might be.
Okay. All right. Now you're getting in on a technicality. I get it.
That one might be an actual argument. But the point is, this is a terrible defense. I can go into the numbers, but they're bottom 3 across the board for us, and they're actually currently our 27th overall defense. So just get in on this. Get Ezekiel. I don't care how high the ownership is going to be. I'm getting him in cash and tournament lineups.
Okay. Brandon, what about you? Who are some running backs you're targeting this week?
Yeah, well, as far as running backs are concerned, I want to kind of talk about Terrence West a little bit. I feel like he's I
thought we were past this.
I know.
But,
he's terrible before the bye week. But the Steelers gave up 127 yards and 2 touchdowns to Blunt before the bye, and over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns the game before to Ajayi. I just think if he gets the work, which is the issue, he did not get the work before the bye. It was a very bizarre game where Flacco was hurt and they were flailing. They almost gave up the game. It was just a very weird week. But before that, he was getting, double-digit big-time carries. And I think if they go back to that, which is the best matchup for them against the Steelers, I think that he might be decent and will have like 0% ownership. I mean, who's going to be like, you know what, I really want Terrence West this week? Well, 0 people.
People now, after they listen to this.
Well, you're welcome. I think that he's a double-digit fantasy point kind of game. And I think that, at least double digits. Yeah.
We should have a bet on that.
You don't think he's at least going to get like a touchdown and 50 yards?
I think Kenneth Dixon is going to see more work. That's my deal. I'm not saying the Steelers are a good defense. I'm saying, I think Dixon. Dan, can you be the tiebreaker here? Come on, you're awfully quiet over there. Step in.
I got to be honest with you. As big of a fan of Dixon as I was in college, I'm
cutting you off. Nope.
Dixon's not recovered. He's not fully back from that injury. He's really
that's what I've been hearing out of everyone from Baltimore is that it's not happening this week. Now, it's Wednesday. That's why sometimes it's really hard to do these, podcasts is that it's like, well, it's Wednesday. The Friday injury report is really when you kind of get down to the nitty gritty, right? You kind of feel out exactly who's going to be where. Things could change. But yeah, I'm with Dan. I've kind of ruled out Dixon for a large role, at least for this week. And until we hear something different, I want to see him have a small role first. I want to see something before I think that Terrence West is completely out of there. I just think this is a good matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And depending on what happens with Big Ben, again, this is a Wednesday show. Mm-hmm. Supposedly he's going to be back, but this could also be a bunch of
malarkey.
There you go. Because, remember when Garoppolo was going to start and then all of a sudden it was Brissett?
Oh, yeah. I started Jacoby Brissett that week. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Your 5 points were awesome. It was terrible that week. The one before was great. But yeah, so I don't know what's going on with him. So there are a lot of question marks, but to me, he's someone that's at least intriguing that 0 people are talking about.
Well, and look, to your point, Pittsburgh does give up literally the most fantasy points to running backs on a per game basis. So again, if you go with West and you're lucky enough that he is the guy, at least for this week, then yeah, I think it'll turn out pretty well. All right, so let's move on to some receivers, Brandon. Who do you got?
I don't know what's going on with Julio Jones' injury. And it's really interesting because I think of Mohamed Sanu, I think probably in the way that we were talking a little bit about Derrick Henry, who, by the way, again, I actually fully support. I just don't support people asking me Twitter questions about should I start Henry or like Terrence West. And I'm like, till Murray's ruled out. Come on now. So that's the only reason I brought up those breakaway points. But anyway, Mohamed Sanu is going to have to be involved if Julio Jones is not at 110%. And let's just be honest for a minute. I think it's really important. Julio Jones has 3 incredibly disappointing games on the season. Now he has 300-yard upside, so of course you never bench him. But let's just be honest. I think that it's okay to be a little frustrated. I think that this week, right now, Mohamed Sanu is going to be in the slot against Jude Ajay-Barima, which, by the way, I had to write out the phonetics for that.
I was going to say, that's impressive.
Yeah, there you go. I checked it out. So far, opposing quarterbacks have a 109.5 rating when throwing towards him.
So not good.
Not good for him. Great for Matt Ryan and Mohamed Sanu.
True.
So I think this is a really good matchup. And last week, obviously, Mohamed Sanu had kind of this breakout. But I think that he's kind of one of those dart throws that I'm okay with, especially with 6 teams on bye.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, and I think he'll be a pretty good bargain. And look, to your point on Julio, because I was talking about this with a buddy of mine today who was contemplating trading for him. If you take out, say, Jarvis Landry's and Julio Jones' best game this season, meaning Julio's 300-yard game, they're actually averaging the same amount of points in a PPR league, Jarvis Landry and Julio Jones, which isn't a knock on Jarvis Landry. It's just keep in mind that Julio Jones, it's not, at least this season, I mean, except for the one game, been like light years ahead of. It's not like an Antonio Brown in 2015 season where, hey, he could go for 10 for 150 like half the time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes when people listen to shows like this or, whatever show on the planet, they get a little frustrated because everyone's like, well, yeah, Julio, obviously. And then they're like, that guy just got me 2 points. And right. I just want to say we empathize with you. And you're right. He did. And sorry, I guess would be my.
Right. This is just forever. Like, just take this apology just at any time.
Yeah. But you would have been really mad at he had a 300-yard game.
Right. And look, he's one of those guys, at least for this season, you start him no matter what.
No matter what.
Just like you said, he could get 2 points. Dan, what about you? Who are some receivers that you're looking at this week?
Got a couple guys I love this week. So first, I'm going to just start by saying I'm going to go back to that Devontae Adams well. We don't know what's going on with Ty Montgomery. He has a sickle cell. I believe. Well, can you guys confirm what's going on with him with the sickle cell? I don't know too much about that. Have either of you looked into it, what its repercussions are?
Just a little bit. What Stefania Bell was saying and a couple other people, just that, he actually has known about this trait for a while, but that he had some symptoms recently that got really bad. And they do think that it's probably associated with some of his usage, which is bad news for fantasy owners.
Exactly.
But yeah, it doesn't feel like a lot of people got sickle cell trait this year. I feel like we've talked about it a lot more.
There's an uptick. There's an epidemic on it. I don't know.
I don't know if Ryan Clark's issues with it has shown a light on that issue, but yeah, so that's the only thing that I've heard, but it doesn't sound great, and you can't love Randall Cobb's health either.
Exactly. So assuming that either one or both of them are out, this offense is going to run through Adams just like we saw it run through Adams last week, and this is just something you can't avoid on DraftKings. If you have an offense like this that's really just dinking and dunking their way down the field, and again, Adams is also used on the outside too. They've been moving him all over the formation, so you can still make those plays on the outside, those back shoulder throws. Rodgers likes when he's lined up there. But this is a guy who's going to rack up 10 receptions easy. Like, he's done it the past 2 weeks, double-digit receptions. So you can't miss a guy like that on DraftKings. It's somebody who you got to lock into your lineups, in my opinion, at least in cash games. And then my favorite play of this week is easily Dante Moncrief. The reason I love Moncrief so much is not only the matchup, which is tilting in his favor against the Packers defense that really hasn't shown any signs of fielding any capable cornerbacks, but mostly because T.Y. Hilton's banged up. He came back into the game last week, really wasn't himself. He looked gimpy out there. He didn't have any of the explosion. He's been dealing with this injury all year. I feel like he's been kind of pushing it to the side, pretending that everything's all right. But what happens is, just like we saw with Hilton earlier in the year when both Moncrief and Dorsett were out, Moncrief's going to become a target monster. That's what Luck was leaning on Hilton earlier in the year. I think he's going to lean on Moncrief in a big way this week. Moncrief looked totally back to 100%, in my opinion, from my own eyes last week. So I think he has that wide receiver 1 upside, and he's priced like a wide receiver 3 on both FanDuel and DraftKings.
Well, and to your point, Indy obviously overall hasn't had a great year. They're 2 games back in a playoff spot. So, it's iffy that they would push him out there too soon, thinking, hey, let's just let him heal first, especially with a hamstring injury. I love your point about Adams. I think I saw where he had 30 targets over the last 2 weeks or something like that. So, the volume is definitely going to be there. So, All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will get to our fantasy fades for this week. All right, everyone, welcome back. So now let's get to the Debbie Downer portion of the episode. And guys, we are fading this week. Brandon, why don't you start us off? Who are you avoiding this week?
Sorry, Detroit Lion wide receivers. You all have to share an average of 10.9 total receptions on the game.
That's tough. That's tough.
And there are 3 of them.
Right.
Because Nquamola continues to be involved. He's at least getting 1 or 2 of those.
Oh, yeah. And probably near the goal line.
Oh, yeah. If they score, it'll be Bolden because you're welcome, fantasy. But, yeah, so we're talking about 4 apiece for Tate and Jones, maybe. This is legit scary. I mean, I get it. And you know what? Chicago definitely made them look less competent than they are. Yeah, let's put it that way. But the Vikings just were not prepared for that game. It was a very weird game. If you've watched the Vikings the rest of the season, you knew that was just a completely out of character, bizarre moment. I think it's very weird that their offensive coordinator, Norv Turner, quit today out of nowhere, didn't tell the team. And Sam Bradford found out from his wife because she has notifications from like Bleacher Report or whatever on her phone. That's unbelievable. So
it's odd. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, but I do think that they at home are rather fantastic. I actually think that the Minnesota Vikings Dome is going to be one of the toughest places to play moving forward. Whenever you talk to a team that's come from that establishment, which by the way, it just opened this year, so we're just getting to know that stadium. They say it's one of the toughest environments that they've played in. The fans are rabid. They're the closest to the field out of any National Football League stadium in the entire country. So I think that at home against the Lions, they're going to feast. So I am looking for them to get 10 to 11 total catches between the 3 of them. And I don't like any of them, especially in DFS. They're just still too expensive for me. Except for Bolden.
To your point, obviously Marvin Jones had that super hot start to begin the season, but hasn't had more than 4 catches since week 4. So, it wasn't even the last couple. I mean, it's been a month now since Marvin Jones did what he did before. And look, it does coincide with the injuries of Riddick and Ebron. I mean, Ebron came back last week and had 7 for 79. So already more catches than Marvin Jones had in a month. So.
Well, I wrote an article too about how Jameis Winston right now has the most yards in the air percentage for his passing yards, right? And actually Mike Evans is averaging 1.8 yards after the catch.
Oof.
That's terrible. It's under 2 yards. Horrible. The opposite of that is Matthew Stafford. So this dink and dunk, so he is by far having the most percentage of his yards are after the catch. And this dink and dunk is just, it's hard because the defense knows where they're going. They know he is, we always talk about Alex Smith being this, game manager, but Matthew Stafford tied him last year for average depth per target. That's who he is. So I just think that's the problem is defenses are like, well, we don't have to worry about down the field because he's not really going to air it out to Marvin Jones. He's going to get it to Marvin Jones maybe 10 yards out, and then he's going to run it the rest of the way. So as long as I can get to him at 10 yards, it's not going to happen. So even when he does have 4 catches, it's not going for as far. So it's just unfortunate.
Dan, what about you? Who are some guys you're fading this week?
Yeah, and before I get it, I just want to touch on a couple things. I think Brandon's spot on there with just the entire fading the Lions receivers. I did something on why you should sell Marvin Jones. I think he's kind of still viewed as like that wide receiver 1 fringe guy, but he's only had double-digit targets twice this season, and he hasn't done it since the week 3 of the NFL season. So like they're completely spreading the ball around. Brandon kind of just broke that down perfectly. I just wanted to kind of give that little target stat. And then the other thing I wanted to say is I've actually been to the new Vikings stadium. I was there for the Giants game earlier this year. And let me tell you, that was the single loudest stadium I've ever been to in my entire life.
See?
And I've been to the Big House, and I've been to the Big House, and I've been to Camp Randall. I've been to a lot of big-time college football stadiums, and then some NFL stadiums as well, but nothing can compare. But for me this week, I'm actually looking to fade 2 games that I think won't be faded by the public. So I'll kind of save the best one for last. I'll start with one that might be faded by some people, but I'm talking about the Giants and the Eagles. Some people look at this Giants offense and they see a high-tempo team that likes to use a lot of no-huddle at home. And while they're right, that doesn't mean that their offense is going to function at a high level just because they're trying to call a high number of plays. And the Eagles defense has been sound all season. They have that wide nine scheme, and it's delivering a lot of pressure. The Giants have been protecting well on the interior, but they've been awful in pass protection on the exterior with left tackle Eric Flowers and right tackle Bobby Hart. So I think they're going to eat up all day, and that's going to go nowhere. And then the other side of the ball, Carson Wentz, he's only thrown for 300 yards once this season. Do you know he's thrown for under 200 yards 3 times this season? It's not
almost like he's a rookie, Dan.
It is like he's a rookie, but I don't blame Wentz for this. I blame the Eagles and their men.
Agreed.
They don't have a single receiver who can get downfield. They don't have a single receiver who can even create separation in the intermediate area of the field. And that's not going to improve against this Giants secondary that just got much healthier with Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie and Eli Apple now back at full health. They're going to have both their starting safeties back. And Janoris Jenkins has been one of the best corners in the league this year. So this is a matchup that I see ending 13-10, 9-6, something like that. Avoid. And then my other big avoid for this week is just going to be one that everyone I think is going to be in on, and that's 49ers against this Saints defense. They're at home. They're coming off a bye. Everybody wants to get against the Saints defense. People are telling me that they're going to play Kaepernick. Some people are talking about a Kaepernick-Hyde stack. But let me tell you something. This Saints defense has played a lot better in recent weeks, and they're just getting back their top cornerback, Delvin Breaux, this week. He said he's at 115%, whatever that means. But whatever, the point is, Delvin Breaux was emerged as one of our best corners as far as our grades go last season. He's a guy who can really make things difficult for the 49ers offense. Not that they move the ball very well through the air anyway. Kaepernick's completing under 50% of his passes or something like that. But this seems like a clear daily fantasy trap for me. So I'm avoiding those 2 games hard this week.
Well, yeah, so a couple things. On that Saints game, I remember when I was doing the podcast on Sunday, what I found interesting was, because you're right, that defense has actually been improved the last couple of weeks. They held Seattle, who usually averaged 64 plays a game, to only, I think, 52 or 54 plays last week. I mean, that's a whole 10 plays less than what they're used to. And you saw what they did.
Seattle also really was horrible.
They were, yes, but if you had to put the 2 together, Seattle or 49ers offense, I mean, I'm pretty sure people are going to go Seattle at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
I'll give you that.
And then to your note, Dan, the highest ranking Eagles receiver in receiving yards, it's Jordan Matthews. Care to guess where he ranks?
I can't even imagine, because they haven't had a 100-yard receiver since Darren Sproles did it in week 3.
Right. Brandon, any guesses? Where Jordan Matthews
40th.
ranks on yards. Huh?
40th?
Very close, 38.
Wow.
There you go.
That's their highest one. Jordan Matthews,
Unbelievable.
over 119 yards so far.
To be fair, though, they're not trying. His actual targets aren't going anywhere. I mean, their playbook is so gross. I think they're selling everyone on that team short. It's very clear that they're playing the most conservative football, and it makes 0 sense. They should have won that game against Dallas, but they're just so scared of Carson Wentz screwing up or something. I don't know what the deal is, but he's being completely hindered by them. I don't think this is Carson Wentz's abilities. I think that he is capable of so much more. I mean, why not throw it? You know what? Who cares? Let Dorial Green-Beckham just run down the field a little bit. Let's just try it out. You get an interception, fine, but you got to move the ball. Like, I'm with you. I could go on. I lost it after that game, by the way. I lost it.
Why?
It did. Because I was just so mad that I just sat there thinking, like, I wonder what Carson Wentz would look like if he was on the Cowboys. Like,
Dak
the Cowboys
Prescott?
let Dak Prescott.
No,
but I mean, and it's nothing against Dak Prescott, but you could just see that this team is behind him. They're letting him play. They're letting him take chances. He got interceptions. He had problems, but he came back. They didn't pull him. They didn't act like, oh, we got to really, shackle you because, got to win this game. They were like, no, go win this for us. You could tell the Eagles were like, all right, we got to win this game, so you can't do anything. It was just the weirdest coaching I've ever seen for the end of a game where you're trying to win. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, let's face it, you've got a first-year head coach in Peterson. You've got a rookie quarterback. It's not like they're going to be the most seasoned guys out there, that are going to be they're going to play the traditional route. They just are, because I don't think they probably know better yet. But anyway, all right. Well, that will do it for this episode. We got a lot of good info in for Brandon, Marion Lee, and Dan Schneier. We'll see you next time on the Fantasy Slant.